I'm Matthew Arndt, the Director of Training for Gloss University.
And I'm David Pedersen, the Technical Director of Gloss University.
We are back with a new tool review video for the best polishers, battery polishers under $1,000.
Yeah, and we got a lot of great polishers today.
We have a lot of great polishers, and what we really wanted to do in this video is Dave and I wanted to walk you through some of our favorite polishers. We want to let our viewers know that this is not a sponsored video. This is a collection of tools that we have acquired here at Gloss University, and we have had the luxury over the last several years to use these tools in real-world scenarios.
Yeah.
So laid out on the table here in front of us, we have an array of different tools with some different functions, from rotaries to dual action polishers and some micro 3-inch polishers.
Yeah, and today we are going to go over each individual polisher, kind of identify the features and benefits, what we really like about these tools.
Correct.
And try to compare some of the costs and some of the details on them.
So we wanted to start with a tool that I got my hands on last year. This is a DeWalt rotary, and I want to let everybody know that I actually got my start with Milwaukee tools. And my first polisher was a Milwaukee. And one of the things that actually led me to purchasing this DeWalt tool specifically was that out of convenience, the DeWalt factory repair center happens to be about a mile from our shop. And so I felt that it was a value add in the moment that a tool might break or something I needed to source a part. I thought for convenience, it would be nice to be able to source parts locally from a close facility. So that was one of the determining factors for me purchasing this tool. But Dave, I gotta be honest, the second feature was the fact that this tool was on a Black Friday sale, and it was a deal I could not pass up. So I kind of went in blindly, having never used a battery-powered rotary. This tool has been with me now for about a year, and I can honestly say that it has become one of my favorite tools to use, mostly because of convenience. One of the things that I really like about having a battery-powered tool, especially if you're watching this video and you guys are doing paint correction on a daily basis or a weekly basis, this tool really allows me to identify problem areas where I might be sanding and I need to pick up the rotary, level a quick scratch, set this tool down, and move on to a DA. So I could tell you that this tool has really served me very well. The one drawback that I have noticed with this tool specifically is the fact that it's a little lighter than other tools that I am used to using. You gotta remember, I've been polishing paint for close to 3 decades now, and I started with what I call the old boat anchor. You guys have probably seen it on our other tool review video. It's an old Milwaukee polisher, 1750 RPMs. This is the tool that I learned on, and this is the tool that is very heavy. So this tool lacks a little bit of that weight that I prefer. However, quick little arm movements, little adjusting on how I hold this tool with my hand. I love the function of this tool.
And just to clarify, most people, when they talk about a polisher, they typically want a lighter polisher, but during the rotary applications, when you're doing heavy cutting, there is some benefits to having a heavier tool and just an overall smoother operation. So for the weight of the tools specifically, most commonly we're talking about a heavier rotary tool specifically, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So this tool is very similar to the corded version of the DeWalt tool in terms of the visual shape and
Correct.
size of it. And when we're comparing rotary tools specifically, in a full-size version, we're gonna have 3 main polishers that we're gonna compare it to in the corded version. It's gonna be a DeWalt, a Makita, and a Milwaukee, right?
Correct.
So this tool is visually very similar to its corded version.
Yes.
And it does have a little bit of a bigger and bulkier head, but overall, it's a great workhorse tool, and the DeWalt corded rotary has already been a staple in the body shop and marine industry for a long time.
And when we've had our trainings and we've had students that have tested out this tool, you know, a lot of people come to us at Gloss University that have been polishing paint for many years, but they're a little lacking confidence with the rotary. I happen to throw the battery-powered tool in their hand. And one of the things that I've noticed for a beginner using this tool specifically, as I mentioned about its weight, it has a tendency to hop and bounce around a little bit. That's kind of a common trait for someone that's learning how to use a rotary polisher in the beginning, but some little arm movements, little adjustments, you can kind of get working really quickly with this tool. So I've had this tool now for a little over a year. I've done close to 125 corrections with this tool. 0 issues, 0 problems. The battery life has been great. I have a 5 ampere or 20 volt battery, and I have 2 of them. So in the way I mentioned, I have been using it. A lot of times I start out where I'm sanding a scratch and just fixing spot repairs. I have never had an issue with the batteries in a year of using this tool. So
yeah. So overall, I like the ergonomics of this tool, even though it's a little bit bigger. It does have a nice feature on the side with a screen, so you can't get any lint or other things getting sucked into the motor.
Yep.
And DeWalt was kind of one of the first people to do that. Now, as we look at more of these machines, most of these machines have kind of adopted that feature on theirs as well. But overall, a solid tool.
Yeah. I would say that this year we've done a lot of SEMA builds, and I love the fact of sometimes when we're doing SEMA cars, we're often pulling out sanding scratches on the edge, and there is times where we are bouncing back between using a rotary and using a dual action polisher. And I just love the fact that there's no cord. I can reach over, I can grab my rotary, and if I need to pick up the tool, it just makes it very convenient and easy to kind of leapfrog between 2 or more tools.
So being a long-time rotary user, a corded rotary user, do you notice any power issues or bogging down for heavy cutting when you're using that cordless tool?
Dave, that's a great question. So as I mentioned, with a little over a year of using this tool, I haven't really noticed any problems with it. Mostly in the situation where I find a problem area or a heavy defect, I usually just tend to overload with a little bit more compound than I'm used to. And most of the time with rotary, you're kind of pushing hard in the beginning and you're backing off pressure as the product begins to break down. So in the manner that I'm using the tool, I have yet to encounter any type of problems with a bogging down at all. So I love this tool. I'm going to continue to use it. In all my years of doing paint correction, rotaries, I can kind of make them all work. However, this DeWalt has done a great job, and I'm going to continue using it in the future.
So I think we should move on to the next tool, which is the Milwaukee tool. But let's bring the tools side by side so we can compare some of the features, because I would say right now, from my understanding, there is no cordless Makita rotary option, and this is actually a DA Milwaukee, but overall they're very similar in the body shape and how they appear and hold together. So obviously the Milwaukee sits a little bit taller with the nose.
Correct.
But they're very similar tools. This is going to be a little bit slimmer and I don't know, slender in comparison to the bulkier body of the DeWalt, but overall they're very, very similar tools. I've used the Milwaukee tools more than the DeWalt myself, and they perform really, really well. We've got a number of local shops that use them and have converted all to cordless and use Milwaukee. They're mainly using the dual action polishers in their shop, but even with the rotary, it solves a lot of problems for them, and they don't have any power issues when doing long rotary work.
Sure, and it's actually something that I wanted to point out to the audience is that as long as Dave and I have been doing paint corrections and the battery-powered technology has continued to evolve, something I actually had a conversation with one of our students recently is that I just got to thinking about this the other day, that I have never performed a paint correction from start to finish using only battery tools. It's always been kind of a series of tools, because that's what we really like to do when we're doing paint correction. If we're doing a really advanced paint correction, it's kind of nice to have multiple different tools for different functions, and so you're kind of laying them out and using the tools to accommodate different shapes and body panels and stuff like that. So
yeah, these reviews are really fun too, because really we're at the level of technology and battery technology specifically that is allowing us to move closer to using only cordless tools. So as these things change and new machines come out, we're noticing a lot more usability and being able to use them on a daily basis.
Sure. So if you guys are watching this video and you have user experience with one of these tools, we'd love to hear some feedback from you. Maybe you can leave a comment in the section below. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, even if there's a polisher here that you don't see, make a comment below as well, and we'll make sure we can take a look at that machine as well.
Okay, Dave, before we move on to the next machine, just wanted to ask you if you have any issues with some of the features on either of these tools, because we have the trigger, the lock for the trigger, and the speed control. Have you had any issues with trying to navigate? Because this could be difficult. If you're a beginner and you don't have a lot of experience using an array of tools, sometimes your muscle memory gets in the way. You get comfortable actually pulling the trigger down and finding the speed control, and that's a frustrating thing for me when I'm using these tools. Sometimes where I'm like, I can't find the speed control, it can become a little annoying.
Yeah, so the trigger is a little bit bigger on the Milwaukee, but the overall handle is a little bit thinner. I have smaller hands, so I prefer the Milwaukee polisher based on the handle itself. If you look at the dials for the speed control, one of them obviously goes up and the other goes sideways. So depending on your preference, the speed dial may cause you to like one over the other. Every tool that we're going to review in these videos is cordless, obviously. I don't think one machine has an issue with charging batteries. They all charge the battery quicker than you would use it. So there's no problem with battery replacement and being able to use it continuously as long as you have two batteries.
As long as you have two batteries, that's the big thing. If you have one battery, it can kind of, if you're doing a correction or trying to do a correction with one battery and one tool, I could see you're probably going through it pretty quick.
Yeah, definitely. So these two tools are probably going to be the most compared when you can find these pretty readily available in big box stores, hardware stores, but also in the detailing segments of the industry as well. These two tools are priced similarly, but a little bit different. So what I think is really nice about the Milwaukee is that you can get into this tool for around $200 on Amazon, $220. So it's very inexpensive. And if you are a Milwaukee user and you use other batteries, it's a really, really good tool for a really good price.
Yeah,
it's hard to beat it, and it's super useful if you can swap out batteries with the other tools. Obviously, DeWalt offers that same value, but the Milwaukee tool line has been pretty popular over the last few years, so I see that as being a really good value to this.
Sure.
There is a difference in the batteries though. Obviously, the Milwaukee is an 18 volt, and the DeWalt is a 20 volt.
Yeah.
So not apples to apples, they are slightly different.
Sure, that's a good point.
But both of them perform up to my level, and I like both of these machines.
Sure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to testing some more of these here in a little bit when we wrap up this video. But let's move on to...
Before we move on, should we talk about price point, or do you want to bring that towards the end?
Dave, that's a great point. Let's talk about the price
these are
point,
the
please.
two machines that, I mean, we can draw it all together and talk about all the pricing, but these are the two that are going to be compared to the most. And this tool you can get into for about $200. This tool is going to be towards $300. So there is about a $100 difference in entry-level tools getting into them. But the batteries are going to be priced a little bit differently. The Milwaukee is going to be about $200 for batteries for a pair, while the DeWalt's only about $100 for a pair of batteries. So while the tool is more expensive, the batteries are less expensive.
That's correct.
And while this tool is less expensive, the batteries tend to be a little bit more expensive.
Sure. So moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about this brand new Ryobi polisher. And I got to be honest with the viewers, before we started this video, I had no idea that Ryobi was making a polisher. So this is kind of new to us, and we're going to be doing some testing and some more testing with this tool. But at first glance, Dave, tell us your thoughts on this tool.
I like the color of it. I like the shape of it. I think it looks cool on my first glance. There's obviously a lot of videos online talking about this tool recently, and it's priced pretty good. You can get into this tool for less than $170. I think it rides a little bit under that, and it comes with 3 pads. So the pads that it come with look very similar, if not the same as a Meguiar's pad, the same colors and the same shape. And you get pads with it for $170. The batteries themselves come outside, so you have to buy the batteries separately. But the batteries are pretty inexpensive. For $100, you get 2 batteries plus a charger. So overall, this tool is the least expensive out of the group, and so far it's gotten a lot of good reviews. So I'm anxious to try it. One of the first things that we kind of noticed was the handle itself is really neat. That the idea that it tips the battery away from the paint seems like it makes sense. It feels good in your hands.
Kind of to enhance the user experience, essentially.
Yeah, but then if you look at it compared to some of the other polishers, all of the other cordless machines that we look at have the battery turned sideways. So while this one stands up really nice and it's not going to fall on its face and land on the pad, the battery actually hangs down really close to the painted surface. So
interesting.
This can, I assume, is going to cause some issues when you're trying to tip and move the machine and get into different areas of cars. But we'll find out a little bit more as we use it. But overall, you can find Ryobi brand in big box stores, great entry-level price, and overall seems like a decent machine.
Well, I think an added feature too for someone that is a beginner, it's kind of nice that it comes with 3 pads because you're right out of the box, you can open this thing up, grab your polish, and get right to work. So that's kind of a nice feature.
Yeah, the one thing that I don't really like about it is it has a push button, more like a short body tool. I prefer to have a trigger on the handle, so that's one of the things I don't necessarily particularly like about it. And then the one thing that we did notice just upon starting it up is it does have a little bit of a higher harmonics.
Sure. These are little nuances that maybe if you're a professional, you can kind of pick up on some of these things. But if you're a beginner, you're not really going to know how the tool might feel or might sound. So I still think, for a beginner tool, this is probably not a bad option, especially based off of price. But as I mentioned before on some of these other tools with the features, that trigger can be, for a professional that's used to locating a trigger or speed control, it kind of becomes a little annoying sometimes.
Yeah, I will say it feels really solid and very durable, so it'll be fun to get a little bit more time on this, and then we'll check back in on our next follow-up to this video where we feature a couple of the newest polishers.
Sure, and if you are watching this video and you happen to have some user experience with this tool, please leave some comments in the section below. We would love to hear your feedback. So before we move on to our 3-inch and micro polishers, we are going to talk about the Flex DA, and this is the most expensive battery-powered tool in the full-size tools that we have covered in this video. So Dave, let's talk about this.
So I consider the Flex separate from the previous polishers that we looked at for a couple reasons. You are seeing Flex tools become more readily available in big box stores, but I would say it's still regarded as a relatively professional tool similar to Rupes. And these come with a premium price too. So while the other machines that we have are great machines and can be used in a professional setting, you're going to find the people that are purchasing Flex are mostly professionals or at least high-level prosumers that have been in the industry or have followed along.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Videos and other things in the past. So this tool is going to be around $600, and we're going to start with this Flex cordless tool because outside of these, this is probably the first one that really came to the market, and now we have 2 more versions that just got released within the last year. We have the new Flex 24 volt as well as the new Rupes cordless as well. So before we get to that, we want to cover the initial Flex ones, which overall, these are going to be similar to the corded tools.
Correct.
Similar body style, similar feel. Overall, very, very durable tools, perform very, very well.
Correct.
But in my opinion, they kind of lacked a little bit of power when it comes to the dual action side.
Sure.
The rotary tool can be used for, spot polishing or even general rotary polishing, but if you are a heavy user, or if you're doing on big boats, it tends to lack a little bit of power, and so do the DAs. With that being said, this tool is around $600, and with the new 24 volt tools coming on the market, I assume that this tool will be somewhat irrelevant.
Correct.
So we do have one of the new 24 volt tools.
It's on its way.
Yeah, and we did get to play with them at SEMA, and the problem with power is no longer an issue. They're really, really cool. The new design, the new casing design is really neat, and overall, tons of really great feedback on them. So we're anxious to compare both the new Rupes hybrid cordless alongside the new Flex and compare apples to apples. So when we get into that next video, these 2 machines are going to be kind of in a whole different category. The new Flex machine and the new Rupes machine ride right around the $650 to $700 mark, so considerably more than these entry-level tools, and a little bit more refined too, I believe.
Sure. And this is where I wanted to kind of just touch upon the fact of one of the benefits and the value adds of attending an in-person training with Gloucester University. This is an opportunity for you guys to actually get down to the shop, get your hands on these tools, and actually see which one works better. As Dave and I have been talking about these tools, we have things that we like and we have things that we don't like. That doesn't necessarily mean that these tools perform badly. With this tool specifically, as I mentioned about the features, that speed control on the side versus being on top is just always a little annoying to me, because I go to reach for the speed control on the top and it's on the side. So little things like that. You know, if you're getting into the detailing industry and you're looking to start a detailing business, you could spend thousands and thousands of dollars on tools really quickly. So if you attend an in-person training, we have an array of tools, and you're just seeing some of the tools that we have here at Gloucester University. This is a great way for you to come down and really see what works best for you.
Yeah, some of the features that we enjoy, or what make us probably like a tool the most, might not be the same things that you like. So everybody has a little bit of a different preference. So on the next video, we're going to do the brand new Flex, the brand new Rupes. We'll give you a follow-up on the Ryobi review. If you've got any other polishers that you want us to group together in that part 2, make sure you leave a comment down below also.
Sweet. All right, so that kind of wraps up our review on the full-size tools here. And we're moving into what is going to be my favorite portion of this video, is the micro polishers. And so we have a handful of new smaller 3-inch polishers that we are now using. And one of the things that I should say, the area that I wanted to start with was specifically talking about Flex. We ended our full-size review with the Flex tool, so we're going to start our 3-inch polishers with the Flex. And so I want to reach over and grab my original Flex PXE80. We have, Dave and I also talked about this tool in our previous reviews, but I wanted to tell you guys that this tool specifically has been with me since February of 2020. I was able to get my hands on this tool right after they released it at SEMA in 2019. And I can proudly say that this tool has weathered close to 500 paint corrections in the last number of years, and it's still working perfectly. It's definitely got some battle scars on it, and it's been dropped. It's been all over the place. You can kind of see there's a lot of compound meshed into the cracks, but I can confidently and honestly say that, and to this point, this tool has been one of my favorite tools to use, Dave.
Yeah, it is a really great tool. There's very few tools that can compare at the price point, and I think that's what makes it so valuable. It's a great 3-inch polisher in a cordless version, but it also does 1-inch and 2-inch work.
Sure.
So it kind of bridges the gap between a lot of the other machines in the market, and just does a great job.
I think it's interesting because it's still a question that both David and myself get asked frequently, but we also see in some of the forums where people are like, hey, what tool should I buy? And I'm always kind of saying, if you're looking and investing in a tool, this tool is not cheap. What's about the starting price? I think these are around $400.
That tool is about $400 to get into.
Yeah.
All of these machines on the table come with a charger as well as 2 batteries along with them for the price. That tool is about $400, but it does the job of a nano polisher and a 3-inch polisher. I currently use my Rupes pneumatic 3-inch polisher a lot because I have a big air compressor, and I do most of my detailing inside my shop, and it's one of my favorite polishers. But when you get into other 3-inch polishers, especially cordless, this machine just knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, and one of my favorite features, I'm a rotary guy. I've been running the rotary for a long, long time, and I just really love the convenience and the ease of use from being able to transfer from a rotary function to a DA function in literally less than 5 seconds. So in the middle of a correction job, if you're working in a tight area and you need to kind of bounce back and forth between using a rotary and a DA, Flex has nailed the game on this and makes it very, very easy for the user.
Yeah, so I mean, technically we probably should have started with the Rupes hybrid, because these are the only 2 tools in the group that do 1-inch micro polishing or 2-inch micro polishing.
Sure.
The Rupes machine is 1-inch and 2-inch specifically, while the Flex comes 1-inch and 3-inch specifically.
Correct.
But you can modify this tool to use 1-inch, 2-inch, and 3-inch pads.
Correct.
So it's very, very versatile. And this one still is only 1-inch and 2-inch. I have a nano hybrid. There's a lot of, I guess, opposed opinions on who likes it and who doesn't like it. I overall think that it's a great tool. It's a little bit more compact than the Flex. It performs very, very well. But when you compare the 2 together, this one has so much more power.
Yeah.
The one thing that I love about this machine is that if for some reason you have battery issues or something would happen, you can actually plug in the cord
that is kind of nice.
Continue to use this machine. So I will say that this machine has great uses, and it was the first one to market. So
how about that?
These are the only 2 micro machines that we're focused on for these videos. Every other machine that I've used outside of the Flex and Rupes, it's got a ton of vibration, a ton of buzzing,
Sure.
and lacking power in every aspect. So if you think there is a micro polisher out on the market that competes with these 2, shoot us a message down in the comments and we'll make sure to get one and review it.
So Dave, before we move on to the other tools, can you tell the audience where you might find yourself using this small nano polisher by Rupes?
I use this for a bunch of different reasons. So, I mean, with a lot of our jobs, I'll use it for really tight areas for rotary polishing, where I can't necessarily get a bigger pad into.
Sure.
But it also works great for small ledges where it's very fine or really hard to refine rotary marks. So I'll use it in the DA version and get those small areas above the top ledges by the windows on the doors. But the other thing I like about this polisher is that it has a trigger. Again, like we were talking about before, the one downside I would say to this tool is it has a button. Not the biggest deal in the world because everything else about it is so awesome.
Sure.
But if I were to critique it, I really like the trigger.
Sure.
This machine you can also swap between rotary and DA. It's not as easy to do as the quick disconnect for the Flex, but it is relatively easy and it serves the same purposes.
Sure.
So as we move out of the micro polishers and into, I guess, the dual purpose,
Sure.
we're going to move into 3-inch polishers specifically. So,
all right, Dave, let's go there. You mentioned it, so where do you want to start? You want to
well,
start?
I mean, I guess before we go, we mentioned this is about $200.
No, 400.
I'm sorry, $400 price point, entry level. This machine's about $465.
Whoa. Okay.
So they're similar in price, but a little bit different. Like I said, a little bit more compact, but overall, this machine performs a little bit better and has more power.
Sure.
Much more power.
I also wanted to just let the audience know that recently have upgraded to the 12-volt battery. When you purchase this new, Flex provides you with 2 of the smaller batteries, which I've never had an issue with any of the batteries. Of course, as we mentioned, when you have 2 batteries, it makes it very convenient to kind of leapfrog between the 2 of them. There have been situations now that I have 3 of these. I've gone out in the field on mobile jobs and actually have been able to have 3 fully charged batteries for tight areas and left the charger at home. So it's worked very good for me. I really like this 12-volt battery, and if you guys are interested in purchasing a Flex, I would strongly recommend upgrading to a 12-volt battery.
So Flex does have a corded 3-inch DA, but they do not have a cordless 3-inch specific. This is their only one that they offer at the moment, but it's awesome. It's got plenty of power. So as we move on to the next competitor here, we have the Rupes iBrid 3-inch machine, which was came on the market a couple years ago. It definitely has the most unique shape out of all of them.
That's for sure.
It's kind of a love it or hate it type of shape, but overall, it's a pretty good machine. It has a decent amount of power.
Yes.
Overall, it performs pretty well. Like I said, I think it's a personal preference on how you hold the machine, but overall, I feel like it's a little bulk and clumsy, and I'm a very big Rupes fan. I love their tools, but it just doesn't necessarily feel the best for me. And the other thing that I don't necessarily like about it is it vibrates and it buzzes quite a bit. So, and I notice it kind of comes from the battery itself. Where you can hold it and some of the noise goes away. Overall, it's a nice machine. It just isn't my personal favorite, and it wouldn't be something that I'd want to use if I was doing it for 8 hours a day.
Sure. You know, as Dave is talking about this, it quickly reminds me of when you and I were at Jesse's a few years back. And Jesse is one of the hot rod builders that we work with, and we had the pleasure to color sand and polish one of his beautiful chargers. And Jesse was the first one to have this, and I'm quickly reminded of a story when I went to grab this tool for the first time and actually test it out. Got my hand on the tool, I put on a microfiber pad, I applied the product, and when I went to go and actually use the tool, I hit the button, and the product's flung all over the place and actually got on my face. So since that day, every time I pick up this tool, I'm reminded of that, and I try to have the muscle memory to not hit this mistakenly. but I just think the trigger placement on this could have probably been a little bit more designed, or maybe this would have been a cool feature where they could actually have put in a toggle switch or a little on-off switch versus hitting this, because this becomes a little annoying for me when I'm using it. So when I have all these tools laid out, this is not going to be my first tool that I choose to use. Now, as Dave had mentioned, we were both big fan of Rupes tools. We use them day in and day out when we're doing correction work, but this tool, as you mentioned, probably could have benefited from some other engineering and design.
Yeah, I think one of the things that neither one of these machines is great is for how you can set it down. So you can either set it down on the pad face, you can set it on its side, you can't set it like that, or you can set it up like this, which is most likely going to fall one way. The flex is very similar. Ooh.
See? Just happened live on camera, folks.
The flex is the same way. There's really not a great way to balance it. You can set it on the back and it will bounce a little bit, but it's tippy. So neither one of these tools really have a great placement unless you have a tool holder or a cart that you can lay it on.
Yeah.
But overall, both solid machines, both can do the work, which is the most important part.
Sure.
And because of the lack of availability in 3-inch machines, I would say that these are all great options.
So before we move on, Dave, can we talk a little bit about the price point of this tool?
Yeah, so this tool is going to be about $425.
Okay.
And the other thing I wanted to mention about this is all of these 3-inch tools are a 12 volt, except for this one, which is an 18 volt. So
okay.
Not that that means anything, but there are some differences, obviously, so we just want to point that out. But this is going to be about $425. Mm-hmm. This is going to be about $465. And I think that's where some of the challenge comes, because you can get into this machine for around $400, and it does essentially both.
Okay. All right, so this brings us to our last tool for this tool review video. We actually have the new Mirka 3-inch polisher. Mirka. This is the latest tool purchase, and to be 100% honest on this video, we haven't had a tremendous amount of runtime with this. We had a little opportunity to practice on the GTO with this tool specifically, and instantly I have fallen in love with the tool, mostly because I feel like in using it, I feel like this is the smoothest tool of the 3-inch tools that we have reviewed in this video. You can tell the moment you put that tool in your hand, and even if you operate this at full power, it's very smooth, very quiet, and not a lot of feedback at all. And what I wanted to let our viewers know is before we started this tool review video, I've had a bunch of people that have reached out to me on my Instagram requesting my thoughts on the tool. So I just thought it's interesting because although this tool is kind of one of the more expensive tools in the lineup, there is a lot of questions about the functions of this tool and is it worth the money?
Yeah, so Mirka is a brand based in Finland, and the majority of their products are body shop focused. Mm-hmm. So this is really kind of the first machine that kind of came into the market in the detail industry. Kevin Brown from Buff Daddy has always been a strong supporter of the Mirka brand.
Sure.
He sells a lot of their sanding equipment. But this machine, from my understanding, kind of came to market from Matt Morman over at Sus Garage. He kind of found it and started talking about it before it became popular.
Sure.
But it definitely has a huge price tag that goes along with it. So this tool is going to be, just over $850. Comes with 2 batteries along with the charger. This tool, they got it right. It stands upright. Doesn't want to tip either way. Nice and balanced. I like the design of the battery in the back. It has tons of power. Endless power. I would say this is the closest machine when you compare to actual usable power to the pneumatic Rupes.
Yep, correct.
That's why I love the Rupes LHR pneumatic, is because it has so much power. The only difference I would say this compared to the pneumatic is that this has a 12 millimeter and that pneumatic has a 15 millimeter.
15.
But the power that this thing has is
for a battery powered tool.
Really unmatched. Yeah. The harmonics.
Yeah.
The way that it sounds and feels.
Sure.
What do you think?
I honestly, it's kind of quiet. I think this is a little louder. The Rupes tool is a little louder. I mean, to me, it's an important thing as long as I've been doing paint correction. I love and appreciate the smoothness of a tool. And that's a lot of times why I always lean to a rotary polisher when I'm doing heavy cutting. And so rotaries, because of the action and the spinning action, it's very smooth. And this, to me, almost reminds me a little bit of a rotary, even though it's a 12 millimeter DA. It's incredibly smooth. And the moment you get to try this tool, you'll feel the smoothness that I'm talking about.
Yeah, it really hums. Oh yeah, feels good too. Overall, just a super incredible tool, which honestly, for $800, $850, you would think that it has to be, but there's really not much to complain about it. I would say overall, my only complaint for this tool is the backing plate. Okay. So I heard about this tool initially because I saw Obsessed Garage had it on there. It was priced very, very high, so it wasn't a priority for me to get. When I visited California, my friend Ty over at Koto Coatings had one. I picked it up, I hit the trigger, and I said, oh my gosh, I love this thing. But at the same time, I noticed that it has so much power that it can really destroy some pads. So when you look at the backing plate of the Mirka compared to the other machines, it has a much larger hook, and it much more resembles something that you'd find in the body shop. So maybe some hook that you'd find on a DA sander. It's got a larger hook, not a micro hook. And while there's tons of different types of these Velcro hook and loop, this one is relatively large. So what I have noticed is that the Velcro in combination with the power can really damage the pads, and a lot of the heat comes from the movement on the Velcro itself.
Interesting.
So far, what you can do is you can replace this with the aftermarket 3-inch Mirka replacement backing plate with holes in it, which is ideally for the sander. And that can help alleviate some of the movement and release some of the heat from the backing of the backing plate. But realistically, I think the best way to solve the only problem that I see with this polisher is a different type of backing plate with hooks. So I'm gonna do some research, weigh this, and weigh some of the other backing plates on the market and see if we can find one that will adapt to this machine and still perform correctly.
It's very interesting. You know, and before we wrap up this tool video, this is something that I wanted to tell the audience. If you're a professional and you are performing paint correction services on a daily or weekly basis, that's some of the benefits of actually having more than 2 or 3 tools. Is when you're performing a paint correction service is to lay out your tools, and then that way if you need to leapfrog between a compounding step or a polishing step, it makes it convenient to grab one tool. And I'm saying this because even though this is new to the arsenal, I could see myself in a correction setting where I would actually use the Flex Pixie with more of a compounding or a cutting application, and maybe tend to lean towards using the Mirka for polishing.
Yeah, you know, the one other thing about this machine is the way that it feels and the way that it hums reminds me a lot of the new Rupes Hybrid cordless full-size tools that we're going to review on the next video. When I tested those at Mobile Tech Expo and SEMA, they feel incredible. They feel like they have tons of power. I know some people were complaining of some issues here and there with them after they launched, but I am very hopeful for the Rupes cordless line because of the feel and the power similar to this tool. And then also really excited for the new Flex cordless tools because of the 24-volt battery and just the overall history of Flex. Flex is in conjunction with Shervon, which has a long history in battery technology. So I assume the new cordless Flex are going to be just as incredible as the cordless Rupes.
Awesome. Okay, we have reached the part of the video where Dave is going to reveal his favorite of the full-size tools, and then I will reveal my favorite of the full-size tools. So Dave, you first. What's it going to be?
So out of this group of tools, my favorite is the Milwaukee. I think that it's the best bang for the buck for me personally. It works well, it performs well, it's balanced, and I have a lot of other Milwaukee tools. I like the features of that, and that's why I prefer the Milwaukee. The one thing we didn't talk about actually is between the Milwaukee and the DeWalt is these batteries, now that ScanGrip has their new light, they actually have adapters, so you can work with any 18 volt or 20 volt battery that you find around. So with a little adapter, you can use a DeWalt battery or a Milwaukee battery, easily way to seamless your mobile or your cordless solutions for your shop. But I would go with the Milwaukee.
Okay, the truth is spoken. Dave said it.
Yeah. So Matt, what's your favorite?
Well, Dave, seeing that I got my start in the detailing industry using a rotary polisher We still do a lot of high-level paint correction and ceramic coating, and I'm always leaning to starting with a rotary, so I'm gonna kind of go with my DeWalt. I love it. I've been using it for a long time. It has 0 issues since the day I've taken it out of the box. So we're gonna kind of keep taking it through the ringer. I love how smooth this tool is. I will look in the future to possibly upgrading to a larger battery because DeWalt has some of those options, but that's kind of further down the road. So I'm gonna pick the DeWalt and I'm gonna stick with it. All right, so moving on to our 3-inch tools. Dave, what's gonna be your first top pick?
It's a pretty tough decision. For me, I'm gonna have to go with the Flex.
Whoa, I thought for a second he was really gonna go with the Merca there. You were really kind of in love with that machine.
The Merca is definitely my favorite machine for what it does.
Okay.
But when you just look at the overall value of what the Flex PXE does, I still feel like it's the best tool.
Sure, that's a
there
good point.
has never been a situation where the power that this tool provides wasn't enough.
Sure.
To get the job done, and in a reasonable amount of time. And while this one performs a lot better and faster, this tool's never let me down, and it serves so many purposes that it's just hard to deny the overall value that it provides as a technician and what it can do. If you're unlimited in your funds, I would say the Merca, but this is my favorite.
Well, you bring up a good point, Dave, because based off of the price of that Merca tool, as I mentioned previously, you can have an array of tools. You can basically purchase 2 of the Flex polishers kind of for the price of 1 of the Mercas.
Yeah, and that's where some of these things come into play. So like, let's say you like the Merca and you're willing to spend the money on it.
Sure.
This only provides a 3-inch option, so you still need a 1-inch or 2-inch. So now you still have the option to purchase the Flex or go with the Rupus Hybrid. And while this one is a little bit more powerful, this tool could definitely do the job in a combination with
Correct.
these two, and you could be extremely happy with this tool. And again, I still own this tool because I use my pneumatic 3-inch,
Sure.
and I don't necessarily have the need to have 8 different polishers. So I don't own a PXE 80 in my shop personally, just at the Gloss University here. I still continue to use this because I haven't found a need to replace it yet, even though it performs better.
Sure.
What's yours? Let's hear it.
All right, so
I think I know.
this is gonna be a tough one for me, and though I really love the function of the Merca, this is still a little bit new to me, and I'm gonna need a little bit more runtime with the Merca. I wanna confidently say that I'm gonna agree with you, Dave, that the Flex PXE 80 is my favorite of the tools. And as I mentioned when we were talking specifically about this tool, that I have close to 500 corrections with this tool, and this is like the original Flex tool. In fact, this tool, the little diode on the top, the faceplate fell off, and it still functions perfectly. So this machine's been dropped, it's been kicked around, it's been through the ringer, and it still has performed every time and never let me down once. So I'm gonna pick the Flex mostly because it's a workhorse, and I have had 0 issues with it. So I'm excited to practice and play more with this Merca tool, but for price and performance, I'm gonna go with this one, hands down.
So that reaches the end of this review video. Make sure that you make a comment down below. Is there a tool that we did not review that's gotta be on this list? Did we get something wrong? What did you like about any of the polishers that we reviewed today?
We appreciate everyone sticking along with this video. Remember to like and subscribe, and please visit glossuniversity.com. Actually, well, so
They only have the little gun one.
the little gun one.
That's not.
That's what's his name. It has got one of our students.
Scrape your scalp.
Ready?
Clean you up real quick.
You guys all ready? That's going, right?
It's going in. Recording.